All right, this is our summary over Chapter 5, talking about documents of sale. I've been several times to our sister school, Arkada University in Helsinki, Finland. And what's amazing to me is always how many American businesses there that are thriving, I would guess. Major chains, those kind of things. So certainly even when you travel abroad, you'll see familiar sights. One thing that is interesting is the picture on the right. That is the bay in Helsinki. It's right there on the coast. And all that frozen stuff that you see is the ocean. You'll notice that there's a pathway that looks like a road. Tugboats go through there constantly because the ocean freezes solid. Again, this is kind of something that they have to deal with because half of Finland is in the Arctic Circle, far north. And as a result, they've had to deal with these kind of very, very difficult adjustments to make the weather hospitable. In fact, one other thing I'll tell you about Helsinki. You'll notice this is one of the classes I visited. Two things that you'll notice. First of all, it's about 80% female, which I wish someone had told me this when I was 19, but unfortunately they didn't. Again, the heavy dominant of women at Arkada as well as most of the schools in Finland. I'm not sure what accounts for that. But you'll also notice overwhelmingly most of them are blonde. Why is that? Why are they fair-skinned and blonde? Because in the north, where they have very little exposure to the sun, only people that are very fair-skinned would absorb enough vitamin D through the sun to be healthy. Out of survival, those are the folks who are going to make it. And so, historically, all the folks that are surviving in that kind of environment are going to be blonde, very fair-skinned, so they can rapidly absorb what little bit of vitamin D they can get from the sun. Somebody that's very dark-skinned isn't going to make it. Now they can because we know to supplement it with vitamins, but it's kind of one of those survival things. And so you'll notice, 80% of the females are all blonde, and kind of in contrast to what they would do in America. In America, they'd be mostly brown, and to highlight attention to themselves and may dye their hair blonde. In contrast, in Finland, most of them are blonde, and to attract some additional attention, they would dye their hair brown. They're just adjusting to the differences of the climate. What are we dealing with when we're talking about goods? Again, when we're talking about imports and exports, we're talking about large quantities of goods that are being shipped long distances. So this isn't like when you go to the grocery store, you physically get the item, you put it in your shopping cart, you physically take it to the front and they scan it and you pay the price. Instead, all these are done through documents of title. The transactions are done without physically touching the goods, typically. Now, what kind of documents of title do we need? First and foremost, the documents have to be negotiable. In other words, they have to be able to be traded and bartered back and forth between parties. What does that mean? Well, literally, if you buy oil that's being shipped to America from the Middle East, during the 6 weeks it's on board that boat, because they have negotiable documents to the title, someone can buy and sell the oil, and it may change hands 4 or 5 times just while it's on the boat. Even though nobody's physically taken the oil, it's always being transported. Because you can buy and sell it through the negotiable title, you can buy and sell the oil with the documents without physically having hold of the oil. And for a lot of goods and commodities, they change hands multiple times while they're being shipped. The other thing to notice is, again, remember, international transactions, we're going to have language barriers. And so one of the ways we handle this is we have certain contract terms that are shorthand. Remember, kind of like the 3-letter symbols you use at the airports to denote where your bags are going. So for Oklahoma City, it says OKC. For Los Angeles, it's LAX, and it's that three-letter symbol so that everyone that works on the airlines, regardless of what language barrier, where you're going on Earth, you can use that symbol and your bags will get to the right location. The same way among contracts, we use those kind of shorthand terms. One of them is CIF. And so you may have a shorthand contract that just says 10,000 units at this price, CIF. And CIF means cost, insurance, and freight is included in the price. So the cost of insuring the goods while they're in transit until the buyer gets them, and the cost of shipping them are included in whatever price that is quoted. Now, where do these terms come from? Well, they're called Incoterms, and again, that's an abbreviation. Incoterms come from the International Chamber of Commerce. The International Chamber of Commerce is in Paris, France, and it works together to come up with a series of about a dozen of these Incoterms. The two most common that you see are CIF, cost, insurance, and freight, and FOB, free on board. But they have about a dozen of these different terms that, again, are used internationally as shorthand. So regardless of the language that you speak or the other party speaks, everyone knows what those three letters mean. And the International Chamber of Commerce comes up with this list of them, and most of them have been used for a generation, but it modifies them every decade. The most recent one was in 2010. And the International Chamber of Commerce has these, and most businesses use them because, again, it's so convenient. Instead of trying to write out in someone else's language, the price includes insurance, the price also includes the cost of shipping. Instead, you just scribble CIF on the contract, and both parties know what that means. And so the Incoterms help alleviate a lot of the difficulties we have in negotiating contracts. But again, they're adopted not through the United Nations, not through the United States government. It comes from the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris, France.